state exists. So the explanation given is that the Vedas say so, which is like absolute Shabda Praman. Upanishads also make a mention of it. And also there have been Jivan Mukts, which is the state just before the moksha. So all these are proof that this third state also exists.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of emphasis is being given to the Jivan Muktas. That is why it says Drishtatvat, that it has been seen, okay, rather than heard, as we had seen earlier.
Okay.
So instead of that, while Vedas and so on, you can say is from my side, but Kapila is saying that Drishtatvat, it has been seen. Okay, so by the way, folks, I missed a little bit of the recording. I have started recording in the middle of Kala's thing. Okay, Vasanaya Anartha Khyapanam, Dosha Yoga.
Shall I take that?
Please take it.
See, here basically says that again continuation of the same Samadhi and Sushupti. And Samadhi and Sushupti. Sushupti is the first level, second is the Samadhi level. In both the levels, the duration is very short. And the moment the Sushupti gets, so the sound sleep gets over and we are awake, we get involved with the objective world, that is sensory world we get into. And Samadhi is little longer, but again we come back to the our consciousness, body consciousness, then we start involving ourselves with the outside world. So both of them, but only thing in the moksha, in this one, what happened, the soul gets its real sense and it doesn't come back to the sensory world and doesn't interact with the outside world. In moksha, when we get it, the soul comes to the absolute real form. What is the real form of the soul? When it gets into that, that is called moksha, and then our interaction with the worldly things comes to an end.
Yeah. Okay, little bit, it is not exactly as per the sutra. You have generally got the gist of it, but little bit the sutra emphasizes something else. So anybody else wants to take this up?
Yeah, the thing that, okay, somebody else?
Go ahead, Vidya. Yeah.
No, Kala, please.
No.
Okay,
No,
Vidya,
okay. So apart from what she said is that at that time we do not have any connection with the objects of the senses, but they still exist. It does not stop them from being there for us. But in the moksha, it will not be there.
Then in the first two, what happens? We are able to experience the existence of the soul, but it's a very, very, for the short duration, we are able to do that.
So this duration is actually not mentioned in the sutra. So that is not there. See, the sutra is saying Vasanaya Anartha Khyapanam, Dosha Yoge Api. That even though we are connected to the dosha, that is the body, still our vasanas exist because of that.
Yeah.
So because of the vasanas, our senses are perceiving and they are also associating things, connecting things. So they are telling us that this is my body and so on. So that is not being done in these two states. However, they are not doing what is required for the third state, which is pradhana badhakatvam, that you have to stop the pradhan, the nature. You have to disconnect nature from us. So that for that, these are not the causes. Sushupti and this samadhi, they do not provide a way in which we can disconnect with nature. Okay. That is provided only in the state of moksha. And
for the simple fact that we continue breathing.
No, once you are in the Jivan Mukta stage, then actually Pradhan has been uh, stopped. So at that time, you have managed to stop the Pradhan. So Vivek is what is required to be the Pradhana Bhadaka.
In the Jivan Mukh stage, you're not connected to your body.
You are connected.
You don't need the body.
You don't.
You don't keep your body.
You keep your body. But it's like the car and driver metaphor that I have told you. So
You realize always.
yes, you are perpetually you are aware that this is not me, this is my car. Okay.
Okay.
So that is why I'm saying when Anuj is saying that by the mere fact that you are breathing, you are in Sushupti and Samadhi. That is not correct. Even when you are in the Jivan Mukh stage, which is essentially moksha in the body, you are still breathing, but you are still disconnected. So the nimitta for that is your viveka only for achieving moksha and for holding back the connection with nature, cutting the connection with nature. All right.
Bhagini, actually, Jivan Mukta has been directly dealt with by Kapila somewhere. I'm trying to recall. In commentary, you definitely.
We came across, I think, the word itself. Or we didn't?
Yeah.
Probably Jivan Mukta as a term has not been used here.
Not been used. Okay,
But,
okay.
we did come across somewhere. Is that mine? I don't think that's mine.
Sorry, that was ours.
Yeah, okay. So we came across Anuj somewhere where it had said that like a chakra, it continues to, you continue to live even after.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you continue to roll on without any friction. Okay, so now let us look at the next one. Na deha matratah karmadhikaritvam vaishishtya shrutehe. Who wants to take it up? Somebody other than these people? Anuj, Mala, Mr. Chandran.
So, okay, I'll take it up. Oh, Mr. Chandran is taking it up? I don't know.
No, you take it up, Anuj.
Oh, okay. So, na deha matraha karmadhikaratvam vaishistya shrutehe. So, just because we have the body, it doesn't. This is now actually he's switching track from the earlier subject of moksha, before that God, etc. So, he's now switching track to deha, treatment of what are dehas, what are karmas, etc.
Correct.
So, first statement opening up is basically mere possession of body doesn't mean there is a karmic gati for this living being. So he is trying to set the base for a future of 3 types of bodies that will come forward. So saying just being a dehi doesn't make requiredly a karma performing entity, and karma here meaning dharma marga karma, adharma marma karma, not anything else, not mere actions. Yeah.
Either of
Actually,
the
mere
karmas,
actions.
Either of the karmas.
Sorry?
Does it talk about?
It just talks about the action.
Yes, yes. Without it, without any connotation of dharma and adharma.
So
And,
here it is not talking about nishkam karma or sakam karma and all that.
no, both.
No.
It's talking of both.
Here it's both. It's both.
Yes, yes. Okay, next one.
Uttira, I can take up. Uttira is not, here it says that each body is a tailor made, and according to that body only that action has to be done or something. Each body is tailor made. That action, that body alone can do it. No other body will do it.
No, not really. See,
because
like,
I cannot be X and X cannot be me. Because I have brought certain karmas, certain things, so I have to act out here.
So the body is tailor-made for you with your baggage of karmas, punya and papa, which you are.
That's a punya. So I bring with this body. So because body becomes the instrument to act outside, and my karma acts through this body. So each body, don't you think, is a tailor made for that karma?
For that soul. For that soul.
Oh, yeah, for that soul, yeah.
Yeah. But now we are looking at bodies as a whole. So we are looking at it from the angle of the body rather than the soul. Okay. So we are giving, we are taking all the deers together, all the cats together, all the camels together. So now we are looking at from the point of view of the body. Of course, the main thing we are talking about is the soul only. That is why we are saying that just because the soul has got attached to some particular body, it does not mean that it can perform karma. Because to perform karma, you require a particular kind of a body. Okay, so that is explained in the next 2-3 sutras.
Take that.
Okay, Prashant,
take-
please take over.
So it says there are 3 kinds of bodies. One is karma deha, one is upabhoga deha, and the other one has both karma and upabhoga, ubhaya deha.
Correct.
So karma dehis are those who are like jivan mukts, if you would have to say. They only do the karma, but they do not get attached to the upabhoga at all, the experience of the karma at all. Whereas the Tiryak yonis, if you have to say, they only have the upabhog because they are driven by the instinct, and so they're not actually performing the karma, but only enjoying or experiencing the actions of theirs.
Correct.
Whereas the human has both karma and upabhoga. We do the karma as well as because we desire also effects of our karma, we experience the upabhoga also.
Yes. So is it little clearer, Gauri?
Yeah. This one is 3 different types of body.
No. So that is what the previous sutra was also saying. That is what it meant, that based on your karmas, you will get a body, and that body will define whether you can perform karma in it or not. In fact, whether that body is meant for karma or upabhoga or karma plus a upabhoga.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, the 3 different types of bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, na kinchidapi anushayinah. Mala, you want to take it up your left?
Yeah, I'll take it up. Now, apart from all this that we discussed, there is one more class of embodiment. That is, there are beings that live in a shared body and which do not partake in consumption or in action. Like there are 2 such. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. There are 2 such beings. One is where in plants where many souls share the same body of the plant, but the thing is they can suffer bit of consequences. I mean, together they can share bit of consequences when some things, whatever affects the plants or things don't go right by way of no less water or wind or extra wind, gale, everything that affects the plants. And then that is of the beings of the inside the plant.
Yes.
Then because they don't control the plant, so they cannot perform any actions, while the animal body in itself, it's like a jail term. The plant body does not suffers more than the other one.
Yeah. And then the second type of...
The second one is about the yogis. See, they can perform everything. They take... the yogis, because they are separate, they have a separate body, they can take care of everything, enter another person's body after they have attained moksha.
No. Yogis attain a particular siddhi in which they can now remove themselves from their own body along with their sukshma sharir. See, typically,
Along with the sukshma sharira. Sorry. Yeah.
even when we leave our body in death, we leave it along with the sukshma sharira. If we have not
Yes.
attained moksha during the period of this creation, then the sukshma sharir which got connected to us at the beginning of creation, that stays with us till the end of creation. Okay, so every time
Okay.
the physical body, a sthula sharira, we leave it with the sukshma sharira, and of course the karan sharira. Both leave
Yes.
along with the soul. But
So, Uttara Bhagin,
yes.
sorry. See, the matter of yoga siddhi has been dealt with in Yoga Darshan also, and you have, of course, also in the previous class explained the siddhi and other classes.
Yeah.
But first time I'm encountering this soul, multiple souls in a body plant and things like that. Where is this concept from?
This is also in our tradition. Some people have dealt with it, some people have not dealt with it. So Kapil is dealing with it. So just like you would have read some new concepts in Yoga Darshanam which were peculiar to Yoga Darshanam. So similarly, this is a concept which I think it was not very clearly mentioned in Manusmriti as well. That is correct. But it is well known. So
Because I don't see a reference to a vriksha or something in Kapila's terms. In your commentary, you comment about it.
I have also commented, and you will find it in Acharya Ji's also.
Oh, okay. Both other interpretations also are there. Okay, because there is no direct reference to Anushayin being a plant. Yeah.
Actually, Anushayi, really speaking, it means residing behind something. Okay, Anu means later, following, and Shayi means normally sleeping, but also it means to reside in. So something which is residing behind. Okay, so Anushayi in terms of plants means a lot of souls residing together, none of them are really controlling the plant. And in terms of the yogi, it is that the main soul which is controlling the body, it continues to exist. This yogi comes in from the back door and he is able to enter the other body. Okay, in that way, both are Anushayis.
Yeah.
Taraji,
yes.
Though completely unrelated to this thing, so when we talk about this yogi and with his sukshma sharira, he moving to another body, what happens to his original body?
To
the body that he
is left behind. Yeah, so he typically leaves it behind in a resting state. Okay.
So that can, I mean, he can come back to the original.
He will come back to the original. So the your involuntary functions which keep the body alive, they will continue as is. It will not be equal to death.
Body has sleep kind of a thing.
Sorry?
Probably it's like that body has gone to sleep kind of a thing.
Yes. Actually, something like this only was used by this Lobsang Rampa. Have you heard of Lobsang Rampa?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a Tibetan Buddhist, quote unquote, who wrote this book, The Third Eye, in which he talked about this third eye which is present, on the forehead, like Shivji's eye. And so he wrote that these Tibetans, they do some operation by which they open this third eye. And once the third eye is opened, then the soul can separate itself from the body. And however, how he has said is that it's as if you are still connected to the body by a silver thread. So that silver thread has infinite elasticity, so you can take it wherever you feel like, and you can enter another body. So he's even talked about entering other bodies and so on. So that concept was taken from here. Later on, his book became a huge bestseller, and then he wrote another book as well. Then after that, it was found out that he's actually a fraud, and he was an American, and he did something to his eyes and all to look a little Tibetan. So I'm not sure that in today's times you can find such people, but this is mentioned in Yoga Darshanam, and now Kapila has also said that it does happen. Yes.
Is this same as, sorry, is this the same as levitating?
No, no, no. Levitating is with the body you float in the air.
Oh.
No, but what is the purpose of yogi to get into the other person's body?
Yeah,
What is
So
the
say,
question somebody also asked last time, so I'm not very sure. But I should think that, like you read those accounts in Ramayana, Mahabharata, and so on. So the king wanted to know something, and to find that out, he went to this sage and he said, I don't know, for example, I am not having any issue, so how do I get children? Is there some curse on me or something? And then the yogi enters the body of somebody else, and then he discovers that yes, this person or this soul had put a curse on the king, and that is why it happened. So some stories like that are there. Okay, but otherwise I'm not very sure why it was. I don't think there was a need per se. There was nothing that the yogi needed for sure, but to help somebody else to get some information, he used to do it, I think. Okay, even that in Nala Damayanti's account, there is that sage, no, who used to keep entering the body of somebody else. Something, okay, I don't recollect it well. So let's just leave it hazy. Okay, so we move on to the next one. Na buddhyadi nityatvam ashraya visheshepi vahnivat.
बुद्ध्यापि नित्यत्वम् आश्रयनिश्रयेऽपि वह्निवत्.
All right. So
आश्रयविशेषेऽपि वह्निवत्.
ashraya visheshepi. So if you guys like, you can mute yourself now. Otherwise, I will mute you from here. And now I will start the lecture. Okay. Okay. So this one says that the parts of the Sukshma Sharira, like Buddhi and Indriya and Mana, these are not Nitya, in the sense that they are not functioning. They don't continue to have information or become active, even if they are in a particular ashraya, that is the body. Ashraya means body here. So even if they are hooked on to only one body, then also they do not necessarily retain all the information which they have gathered. Just like fire. So this fire upma we will see later. What this means is that when I leave this body, I do take my Sukshma Sharir along with the soul, right? But I do not take the information of this life into the next body. Buddhi, that is Jnana. Here, Buddhi, Nityatvam, you must understand as the knowledge which that Buddhi had gathered. So not all of that knowledge will be available to you in the next body. Typically, the things which are very specific to this body will not be remembered. But generic knowledge, as I have told you many times, knowledge of Sanskrit, knowledge of the Vedas, knowledge of how this universe works, even knowledge of music, and even some effort which you might have put into control your body. These things will travel with you in that Sukshma Sharira as information. But other things, say you had an accident and you broke something, the pain of the accident and the fact that you cannot use a particular part of your body, these kind of things which are very specific to this body will not travel with you in your next birth. All right. Similarly, even Indriyas. See, Adi is given over here, Buddhyadi. Adi has not been tackled by the commentators, and in fact, the explanation I'm giving you is a little bit different from what they are covering. So, Adi includes your Indriya and Mana as well. All the yonis do not allow for the functioning of all the senses, nor do they allow for the functioning of the mind in the same way, because the mind obviously is hooked to the senses. So if your sense of hearing is not there, then that part of the mind is not available now to the being. So even those are not nitya in that sense. Okay, they travel with the body. They are dependent on the capabilities of the body. Vanivat. So we know that, or at least the way Indians saw it, was that there is fire in a piece of wood, for example, which makes it inflammable. So what you call inflammable, they would say that there is fire in that arani, in the wood. Okay, that was their way of putting it, that this piece of wood, this indhan, has the capacity to produce fire. Piece of concrete doesn't have it, it will not burn. So that is the difference between the properties of fire and say of wood and concrete. So when you know that this particular item has fire in it, it is hidden right now, but once you light it, then it lasts for the period that the indhan can support it, and then it dies. So similarly, this body, as long as it lasts, the knowledge of this body, which is specific to this body, will continue to last, and once this body ends, that knowledge also disappears. So that is the metaphor of Vani. Okay. Okay, so next one.
Just
Yes, tell me.
small confusion.
Yeah.
I understand, like probably what he is trying to say is maybe the knowledge of the relationships that I have made with this family and all, that may not go across with me. But whatever the knowledge that we are gaining, that would still go with us, right? That's what I remember once
Correct.
you mentioned.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that needs to be said properly. Otherwise, we will stop practicing, because we know
I
we
just
are
said
not
it.
going.
I just said it. Knowledge of, even knowledge of Sanskrit will travel with you a little bit. So you will have to again restart it. But even the effort you put in to understand Adhyatma, to understand the Vedas, that will travel with you. So
So
rest assured.
only the specific knowledge that is related to this body we will live here, and
Yeah.
probably
Even actually, the souls that you are connected with in this world, you are connected for a particular reason with this bunch of souls. And I think this is now a little bit from my external reading, so take it with a pinch of salt, please. But uh, we are linked to particular souls, and we continue to run into them in every birth, unless we really change ourselves and take ourselves either very up or very down. If we continue to with our nature, then these are the people who give us the upabhoga, the phala, which is required for us. So somehow we will continue to hit into the same people, and that's why you immediately feel a connect with some people. And yeah, you feel an immediate disconnect also with some people, because there's a previous from your earlier janma, you are carrying some thread. Okay, so ashraya siddhescha. So now he covers the other uh, Anushayi part of it and the yogis part of it. That even if the ashraya is asiddha, that is the body is not clearly defined for this person. The previous one said ashraya vishesha. So this particular body was for this particular soul. Now it is ashraya asiddha. That this particular ashraya is not for this soul. So even in that case, this buddhi and others will not be nitya. That means their functioning or their knowledge will not be carried over necessarily. When in an Anushayi body, obviously you are not getting too much knowledge to begin with. So, so many of the things are not working anyway. Your Indriya are not working. Your Mano probably is not working. So only Buddhi is probably working. In the Vriksha, in the plants, maybe little bit. I think Indriya and Mana is again not working. So already those things are shut up. And even the buddhi which is working, you do not carry over. So if you were a plant in the last birth, you will not carry over that information into the next one. Okay. Okay, next one. Yoga siddhayopi aushadadi siddhi vannapaniyaha. So now he takes, he's finished this thing about the Dev. The last sutra finished that subject. But he takes up something which we covered in about the Anushayi, about the yogi part of it. So he takes up the yoga siddhis. So as Anuj raised the doubt, and possibly all of you also have that doubt, even I have that doubt to some extent. So he says that just like medicine, the siddhis which are attained by yoga cannot be refuted. Okay, this is a very strong statement which he has made, and this is with the assumption that you can always doubt the yoga siddhis. So even in Kapil's time, it was understood that people will not encounter yoga siddhis, and therefore they will doubt it now and then. So if you see this metaphor of medicine, it is actually quite amazing. We don't think of it because we take medicine so much for granted today. We are all the time popping something or the other in our mouths and injecting stuff in our body. But if you just see one small pill that you take actually makes a difference to the whole of your body, typically. Okay, that is really amazing. I mean, you have taken a very small amount of chemical and yet it has affected the whole of your body, and very dramatically most of the time. So he's saying that just like that is actually very miraculous if you think about it. In a way, one should actually consider it as a miracle, just like there used to be the shamans and the miracle workers in early days. The medicine man used to be considered a miracle worker because it is so miraculous, the effect of this medicine. So just like the medicine works on our body in such a miraculous fashion, similarly, these yoga siddhis are also miraculous and they do occur. So do not doubt them. That is what Kapil wants to say. They work like medicine. Medicine, maybe we think that we can explain how it is working. Though really, if you ask me, you understand some 50% of how the medicine works. And yoga siddhi we cannot explain today because we don't even know how it is. We don't see it in real life. So it becomes that much more difficult to explain. Okay. So
apalapaniyaha means to doubt.
Na apaniyaha. So niya is ni dhatu only, to take. So apaniya cannot be taken away. So yoga siddhaya api oshadadi siddhivat na apaniya. Just like the Oshadi has this siddhi of being able to cure you, similarly the yoga siddhis are there and you cannot take it away, you cannot refute it.
Okay.
Okay. Now he ends the chapter by telling us that also believe in the soul. So this previous one he has said, believe in the yoga siddhis, don't discard them. Similarly, now he's saying that all these arguments that I presented about the soul and the soul's connection with the body, you can say just forget it. Let us not believe in a soul at all. Why do you have to believe? We will just say that nature produces this property of consciousness, and that's good enough. So he says that is also not correct. Do not agree to that. So this is the next sutra. न भूत चैतन्यं प्रत्येका दृष्टेः साहत्ये अपि च. So of course the repetition of the last two words is, or rather last three words, is for revealing the end of the chapter. So he says that na bhuta chaitanyam pratyeka adrishteha. So he says that bhuta, that is the inanimate matter, does not have chaitanya in it, does not have consciousness in it. If it had, then all of matter would show consciousness, but it is not seen. So therefore we have to conclude that it is not bhuta chaitanyam. It is not inanimate matter which is conscious. Even if you don't take pratyeka, even if you take say 10% of matter should show consciousness in it, then even that we do not see. It is only when matter is in this form of the body that we are able to see it. Sahatya means in a combination. So even when all these various inanimate substances are combined in a very particular fashion, even then we do not find consciousness in it. Okay, what this implies is that you can add substances together, and in that famous experiment which was done, I forget the scientist's name right now, but they had tried to create the conditions which were present in early Earth, at which time life was getting generated. So they had a large quantity of methane and electricity passing and very high temperature and so on. They were able to develop these membranes. So spherical kind of bubbles were created of amino acids. But that was it. Now if you look a cell, the most basic of cell of an amoeba or a paramecium, it has so many things in it, so much intelligence is built into it, that it is really impossible for substances to just come together and produce life. Today also we see that life comes out of life. Till now we have never observed a creature coming out of an inanimate soup, right? We always find that the DNA of one is passed on to the next generation. So from generation to generation, beings reproduce. We do not see we have not seen so far the production of life from non-life. That is what is meant here. Now, this actually almost the same words were used by Kapila earlier also in the 3rd chapter when he was again proving the existence of the soul. So this was verse number 320, which said, Na sansiddhikam chaitanya pratyeka drishte. So you can see pratyeka drishte, both are shared here. So there he had said that Chaitanya is not produced, is not a natural property because of inanimate substances, because it is not seen in everything. It followed with prapancha maranadya bhavascha. If it was so, then we would not have the universe and we would not have manana, etc., different states of consciousness, because then you could not um, tell how that whole being is seeing itself as a single consciousness. Okay, the whole living being is seeing itself as one consciousness and not each cell feeling that I am a living being on my own. When you have that single consciousness, then only that death can happen. As you know, death doesn't happen in phases, one cell at a time. Death happens all together. So some one entity has left the body. Okay, Elvis has left the buildings. So that is what happens. Similarly, in Murcha, when you uh, are unconscious, you are unconscious because that consciousness has broken the connection with the senses. Similarly, in Sushupti, etc. Then the next one was Mada Shakti Vachet Pratyeka Paridrishte Sakshmyat Sahatye Tadudbhava. Here we have Sahatye. So there he had said that if you say that it is like alcohol, where you combine carbon, hydrogen and oxygen in a particular fashion, neither was carbon dioxide intoxicating, nor sorry, not carbon dioxide, carbon intoxicating, nor hydrogen, nor oxygen. Yet when they come together in this particular combination, this property of intoxication emerges. So similarly, consciousness emerges, which is actually the belief of scientists today, that in a particular fashion when they come, then consciousness emerges. So they don't feel the need for a soul. So he had, Kapila had told at that time that if you look at it carefully, if you study the effect of this alcohol molecule on the brain and how it produces intoxication, you will see why. You will be able to work out the connections because of which intoxication happens. But we are not able to explain this in living cells. In living creatures, we are not able to define that, okay, when this combination happens, there is life. Okay, so you can see we can keep cells alive, quote unquote, in a petri dish, but there's no soul there, and we know it. You are keeping that machinery running for a while, but that soul, the consciousness is missing. Okay, so it is this machinery, fantastic machinery which God creates. It is possible to keep it running partially. You know, like even that frog's leg, if you put electricity in it, it moves. So that also was discovered long back, that even in a dead frog, if you put electrical current, it gives a jerk. So even in this gecko's tail, we can see once it leaves the tail is still moving. So it is not just movement which is there, but consciousness that we are talking about. Movement may be there in inanimate things, but consciousness will not be present. Okay, that finishes this chapter. Any questions? Otherwise, we will have to look at a recap of the chapter. Where are we on time front? Okay, we just have 10 minutes left.
Uttara,
Yes.
just tell me the gist of this last verse, please.
Last verse is saying
only with the soul.
Yeah,
life.
consciousness.
That's
Consciousness is not to be found in the body by itself. So don't ever think that consciousness is related to inanimate matter. Always
okay.
Chaitanya is present only in the soul.
Okay, got it. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right. So let us do a quick recap of these verses. Maybe you can unmute yourselves and repeat with me. Okay. So from the 84th. No, not sorry, not from the 84th, but the 86th. Na buddhyadi nityatvam
न बुद्ध्यादिनित्यत्वम्
आश्रय विशेषेऽपि वह्निवत्
आश्रयविशेषेऽपि वह्निवत्
आश्रया सिद्धेश्च
आश्रयासिद्धेश्च
योगसिद्धयोऽपि
योगसिद्धयोऽपि
औषधादिसिद्धिवत्
औषधादिसिद्धिवत्
नापनीयाः
नापनीया
न भूतचैतन्यं
न भूतचैतन्यं
प्रत्येकादृष्टेः
प्रत्येकादृष्टेः
साहत्येऽपि च साहत्येऽपि च
साहत्येऽपि च सहत्येऽपि च
इति पंचमोऽध्यायः. Okay. So now if we were you able to go back and look at the 5th chapter a little bit? Was it possible?
I went through some introductory portions of your comment. Not beyond that, I ran out of time.
Okay. What about the other?
I too did that little bit, earlier part.
Okay.
next
Okay.
class we will be prepared.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a hope. All right. Okay, so
I went through and just got the various things he had dealt with in the chapter.
Good, good. So tell us, what are the things we dealt with?
Only the headings I can tell you.
Sure.
No.
Sure.
Yeah, first was the need for God. Like all these, he was answering the various arguments put forth.
Yeah.
So we went through first the need for God. Then, does God exist? Because there is no pramanas to prove. That was the question. Then came to the need for dharma and proof of its existence. The nature of dharma, the nature of anumana pramana and shabda pramana. Then the nature of vyapti, comprehension of the Vedas, origin of the Vedas, origin of the universe. Then the nature of moksha, nature of the mind, and finally the types of bodies.
Right, right. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is putting it well. So to start the ball rolling, we will continue maybe a little bit more next time when all of you have done some revisiting of this chapter. So to begin with, we looked at a proof of God starting from dharma. So we said that we know that dharma exists because we see other people behaving in the learned people behaving in a particular fashion. We find that there is a phala which comes back to us. And also, of course, Shruti is there, that there is such a thing as good deeds and bad deeds. Okay, so the fact that there is good and bad, that then implies that there is somebody monitoring what I am doing, whether what I have done is good or bad. You know, this is something like Santa Claus. If Santa Claus is giving presents based on how you were through the year, then that implies that he has been watching you through the year. Okay, so the same thing is there, that you need to have then that other entity sitting and looking at you all the time to know what you did, good or bad. Okay, so the very concept of dharma directly implies God. If you negate God, then you will automatically negate dharma itself. And you can see it in these communist countries, for example, China, who may be listening in on our these things, since Zoom is being listened to by China. So you can see the disappearance of ethics in communist countries because they have negated God. So once you have negated this entity which is determining what kind of things which we presume are happening by chance are actually not happening by chance but by some other intelligent entity, then only we control our behavior. We behave in a particular fashion. Given a choice, we would all be selfish, we would mostly be cruel, and we would not do good things. It is a natural tendency, you know. With difficulty you will find animals collaborating with each other and stuff like that. Typically
Upbringing plays a huge role, and because our parents were also God fearing, the upbringing was proper.
yeah, so the presumption is that there was somebody telling you there is a God, right? So if we say that the human race never knew about a God, then you will probably never behave decently. Okay, so starting from there, Kapil had gone on and proven certain things about God. He had taken up several arguments, what God could be like, how he could be behaving, and so on. And here I wanted to particularly stress on one sutra for you, where actually it is a deep sutra and it has several corollaries, and you must think over it. This is the 6th sutra. Na raga dhrite tat siddhi pratiniyata karanatvat. So he says this in the context of God, that God could not be like XYZ, because in that case he would be having attachment. But the sutra by itself says that without raga, there can be no karma. Pratiniyata karanatvat, because everything has a defined cause. Okay, so if everything in this universe we can see has a particular causality, it follows hydrogen and oxygen come together to give you water. Only hydrogen and oxygen come together to give you water. You cannot bring an iron and produce water from it. Okay, so that niyata karanatva is very important. We see it in everything, and that is why we are able to do so many things which are unbelievable, like sending a space vehicle to Mars. So this is because everything follows a cause and effect relationship. So same thing in when we apply to deeds, then only when deeds are performed with raga and of course the mirror image, that is dvesha, then only they lead to a phala. Okay, that is the causality between a deed and its phala. The cause is the raga and the dvesha. Otherwise, the stone is rolling off the mountain also. You can call that also a karma, but it is not a karma. It does not lead to some consequence on the stone. You may also roll down the mountain, but yours will become karma if it has some raga or dvesha involved in it. As soon as this raga or dvesha get applied on a deed, it becomes a deed with a consequence. And as soon as we are able to remove this raga or dvesha from ourselves, from this buddhi of ours, then we become nishkam. Okay, so this was the more deeper reading of the 6th sutra. Please read all the sutras well, and questions are most welcome. If you still have any doubts, we will take it up in the next class. And hopefully we will begin with the 6th chapter as well.
What does the 6th chapter deal with, Bhagini?
This 6th chapter, it actually takes up what I would say slightly lower level proofs of things which have already been proven. And it also deals with some very interesting subjects, like just like we did some karma day and anushayis in this one. There are some very interesting items even in that chapter. Again, it is a miscellaneous kind of a chapter, just like this one. Several items are covered. All are linked, as Kala mentioned. All the topics, something similar you will find in the next chapter as well. and yet there will be some difference as well. So some proofs, maybe some proofs you didn't gel with them in the previous ones. Kapil has given you some extra proofs. I would say they are secondary proofs, and I personally find them a little bit weaker sometimes, but it may gel with you. So like that, this is also, Shashtodhyaya is also a little miscellaneous kind. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. You say the pair. Then unmute yourselves. Om Abhayam Mitrat, Abhayam Amitrat.
Om Abhayam Mitrat, Abhayam Amitrat.
Abhayam Jnatat, Abhayam Puroyah.
Abhayam Jnatat, Abhayam Puroyah.
Abhayam Naktam, Abhayam Divanah.
Abhayam Naktam, Abhayam Divanah.
Sarva Asha Mama Mitram Bhavantu.
Sarva Asha Mama Mitram Bhavantu.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It's interesting, singular mitram is used because sarva is like, I think, ekavachana.
Correct, correct. So this is Asha, but Asha is in plural. So Sarvaha, Ashaha, Mama Mitram Bhavantu. So,
Bhavantu is again is plural, so it's weird.
So no, it's not. आप सभी मेरे मित्र हो. You know, that is how you would say.
Oh, okay, the karma type of involvement of mitra. It is not in a plural.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. Okay. All right. Any other
Thank you.
question, observation is there? So I would urge you that when you are doing your recap, make sure, like the sutra which I am telling you, I just told you, sutras do have deeper meanings. So once when you are looking at doing a bird's eye view of it, you will find that there are these deeper meanings. They will occur to you yourself. So please do read in that way.
Yeah, right? Somehow like when you were describing the sixth sutra now, it, almost the reflection of the dehas that you talked about. Because we do things with the raga, you also have the upabhoga of it. And so, you know, that's kind of probably, we could link things up like that and extrapolate everything.
Correct, correct. Right. It's exactly right.
Thank you, Traji.
Okay. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.